Hello, everyone. We'll just wait a few minutes till others can join us. Okay, great. I think the participant number has stopped increasing and we've got 78 participants, which is awesome. I want to welcome you to the SNEP Network's Massachusetts Grant Funding Workshop. My name is Martha Shields and I direct the New England Environmental Finance Center. The NEEFC is the entity that leads the SNEP Network, which is the host of this webinar. With the unprecedented funding available for climate change and infrastructure, we thought it was important to repeat this workshop for the second year with the updated opportunities in Massachusetts. Our goal for this workshop is to provide a look at the funding opportunities to advance your project implementation goals. In this workshop, we brought together funding representatives from Massachusetts, as well as some regional and regional and federal funding programs. Together, we will be discussing funding that represents over $275 million focused on water quality and climate resilience, which is quite unprecedented, I think. After you hear from individual funders, you will have the opportunity to go into different Zoom rooms to meet and speak directly with them and ask any questions you may have. Before we begin the webinar, though, I'd like to take a minute to review a few Zoom logistics. I think we all know these, but it's worth repeating. At any point during the webinar, you may enter your questions into the Q&A box on the Zoom control panel. We will also have a Q&A session at the end of the funding presentations where some of those questions may be answered if they're not already answered while the webinar is going on. We will have closed captioning available for today's webinar, and to access that, you'll need to click on the closed captioning icon in your Zoom control panel as shown on the slide. We are recording the funding webinar presentation during the webinar portion of the workshop, but not in the breakout rooms. We will be providing you a link to the recording in our follow-up email. And now just a little about the program overview. This webinar, like I said, is organized by the SNEP Network, which is led by the New England Environmental Finance Center. Our mission is to build local capacity by providing no-cost training, webinars, and technical assistance to communities in the Southeast New England program region, also known as SNEP. The SNEP Network is a collaborative group in the SNEP program of technical assistance providers that have expertise in stormwater management, water quality habitat restoration, low impact development, watershed scale conservation and restoration, and financing, which is a critical service of the SNEP Network. We provide this so that communities can advance all the work that they put into the planning and move it into the implementation phase. Communities in the SNEP region can request free technical assistance and learn more about the SNEP Network. If you want to learn more about the SNEP Network, please go to the website. That's linked in the slide. And now it is my pleasure to introduce the Chief of the Surface Water Protection Branch of the Water Division at US EPA's New England Regional Office in Boston, Mel Cote. Mel will provide us with opening remarks for today's workshop. Take it away, Mel.
Great, thank you, Martha, and good morning, everyone. As Martha said, my name is Mel Cote. I'm the Chief of the Surface Water Protection Branch at EPA Region 1. I've worked on ocean, coastal, and watershed management since I started with EPA in 1990, and I've served as the chair of the Southeast New England Program, or SNEP, steering committee since 2015. Welcome to the second of two SNEP Network funding workshops at which we'll provide information on a wide variety of EPA, state, and other federal grant and technical assistance programs that support water quality and habitat restoration and protection in the SNEP region. Today's workshop will focus on these opportunities in Massachusetts, and yesterday we focused on Rhode Island. I'd like to thank the New England Environmental Finance Center for managing the SNEP Network, which planned and is hosting these workshops, as well as providing a lot of other services for the SNEP region, which Martha just described. I also want to thank the EPA SNEP team members who helped organize or are presenting at the 2 workshops. Next slide. As I'm sure most of you know, the SNEP region encompasses the coastal watersheds of Rhode Island and southeastern Massachusetts, including what I'd characterize as the ground watersheds of southern Cape Cod, as well as Block Island, Martha's Vineyard, and Nantucket. Like many other parts of the country, the region faces many threats to healthy ecosystems and thriving communities, including water pollution, overdevelopment, lack of access to the water, climate change, and overburdened and underserved residents. There has been a lot of progress since the 1970s. Municipal and industrial wastewater discharges are strictly regulated, and if they are still contributing to poor water quality, can be further regulated with even more stringent requirements. However, while there has been progress reducing stormwater and other non-point sources, these remain very challenging in the face of development and associated increases in impervious surfaces. Those same pressures also contribute to habitat fragmentation and the loss of important ecosystem functions. Next slide, please. Great. SNEP was established when Congress included language in the federal fiscal year 2012 Appropriations Act directing EPA to, quote, convene and lead a comprehensive regional policy coordination and outreach effort to protect, enhance, and restore the coastal watersheds of southern New England. Recognizing there already were several programs and plans focused on subregions of the SNEP region, including the Narragansett Bay and Buzzards Bay National Estuary programs with their comprehensive conservation and management plans, and the Cape Cod Commission and Mass DEP with the Cape Cod 208 area-wide water quality management plan, EPA saw this as an opportunity to build on those efforts by providing financial and technical assistance and coordinating and integrating their ongoing work through its own strategic plan and vision. SNEP also has emphasized and facilitated innovative technologies and approaches to our more intractable environmental problems, and has worked hard to develop better indicators to determine whether management activities are having their desired effect. Next slide, please. Yeah. Base program funding has increased from an initial appropriation of $2 million in FY federal fiscal year 14 to $7 million in FY24. And like the other EPA geographic programs, SNEP has benefited from the influx of bipartisan infrastructure law funding, $15 million over 5 years, or $3 million per year from FY22 through FY26. And by the way, at the end of this month, we'll be exactly 1/2 of the way through the 5-year time frame for bill funding, although projects funded in the last 2 years will obviously continue on past FY26. This increased funding has enabled SNEP to expand its programming, and along with increases in other federal and state funding, provides an unprecedented opportunity to enhance and accelerate our collective efforts to restore and protect these critical ecosystems. The current federal administration also has placed a significant emphasis on targeting these additional resources to building resiliency against the impacts of climate change and assisting overburdened and underserved communities. While EPA and SNEP annual appropriations are subject to change from year to year, you can see from the bar chart that the program has seen a gradual increase in funding since FY14, and we certainly hope it will continue to be at least level funded at the $7 million level into the future. And this only applies to SNEP base appropriations. Bill funding levels are set through FY26. Next and last slide. So today you're going to learn about several upcoming opportunities for funding and technical assistance from SNEP, the Narragansett Bay Estuary Program, National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and New England Water Infrastructure Network. We also have several presentations on funding and technical assistance programs administered by the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, Department of Environmental Protection, Office of Coastal Zone Management, and Division of Ecological Restoration. Like SNEP, the National Estuary Programs are all receiving bill funds to supplement their base appropriations, while EPA's State Revolving Fund Program has received a very large increase in bill funds, all of which are passed through the states to accelerate the construction of new and upgraded municipal wastewater, stormwater, and drinking water infrastructure. The New England Water Infrastructure Network, which also is administered by the New England Environmental Finance Center, was established with EPA funding specifically to help communities gain access to bill funding for a wide range of water infrastructure needs. State governments also stepped up in a big way to help restore water quality and habitat and build resilience at the community level, and Massachusetts is no exception. We'll hear about several of its programs next. So with that, thank you for being here today, because it means you're interested in helping us achieve our shared vision for a resilient ecosystem of safe and healthy waters, thriving watersheds and natural lands, and sustainable communities. And I'll turn it back to Martha. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Mel. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Kimberly Groff, SNEP Network Massachusetts liaison. Just a few words about Kim. Kim has dedicated her 30-plus-year career to advancing water quality improvements in Massachusetts. And prior to joining the SNEP Network, she served as the director of the Watershed Planning Program, Division of Watershed Management with Mass DEP. There, she managed water policy development, surface water quality standards, ambient surface water monitoring, water quality assessment, development of TMDLs, and the development of watershed plans. So it's my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Kim Groff. Okay, Kim, take it away as the host.
Thank you, Martha. It's really a pleasure to be here today on behalf of SNEP Network and help showcase this unprecedented amount of funding in the state of Massachusetts for water quality infrastructure, habitat, and climate resilience. It's my pleasure to introduce the next 11 speakers. These speakers represent a variety of state, federal, and nonprofit funding opportunities. As Martha pointed out at the outset, there's $275 million in aggregate. On the Massachusetts side, there's about $125 million. And combined with the federal and nonprofit, that brings us up to 275. So have not seen this before in my 30 years of service. So what we'll do is we'll start off with the Massachusetts state programs first, and then we'll transition into the regional and federal opportunities. I want to just prime you that there's a lot of information here, and we will be following up with the slide deck, the recording, and the contact information for each of the speakers. I encourage you, if you have general questions, to put them in the chat during the webinar portion, and we'll do our best to get to those questions both during the program and at the end. And then you'll also have the opportunity to speak directly with the funders in our Zoom breakout rooms. So without any further delay, I'd like to kick it off with Courtney Rocha. Courtney is representing the Massachusetts Vulnerability Preparedness Program. Courtney is the Southeast Regional Coordinator from MVP. And Courtney, the floor is all yours.
Thanks, Kim. I'm happy to be here today and give a little bit more information about MVP. As Kim said, my name is Courtney Rocha, and I am the Southeast Regional Coordinator from the MVP program. Our grant is currently open right now, and we have at least 30 million available this round. I believe up to 37 million, and that is 3 million per municipality, political subdivisions of the Commonwealth, which includes some water departments and regional planning agencies, and then also state and federally recognized tribes. And then for regional projects, we can award up to 5 million per grant. We have lowered our match from 25% to 10%, and then there is zero match for federally and state recognized tribes. So important dates is that our RFR is currently out now. You can find it on the Combine's website, and this is our action grant. Until March 27th, you can submit questions to your regional coordinators or the MVP manager about the RFR itself, and we can answer those. And then the applications are due 6 weeks later, so we're looking at the beginning of May. What types of projects do we fund? So we fund community identified priority actions to address climate change impacts. So the priority actions come from MVP planning grants. So out of all the municipalities, 351, 349 have gone through the MVP planning process. So if you are in, chances are at 98% you have a planning grant in your town, and any of the community identified planning action items in that plan are eligible for action grant funding. And then if the town has done any subsequent community climate planning, those actions are also eligible as well. We fund all phases of design, from planning, assessments, capacity building, and regulatory updates, design and permitting, and on the ground construction and implementation. Our priorities is that successful applications meet 9 of our core principles, which you can find on our website, but we have an emphasis on nature-based solutions, engagement and outreach, and environmental justice, and priority populations. To be eligible for MVP, you must be MVP certified. So as I said, to be MVP certified, you must go through the MVP planning process, which 300 and some odd communities already have. If your plan is up to 5 years old, which means that you completed your plan in 2017 or 2018, you'll need to apply to MVP 2.0 in the fall of 2024 to re-up your planning process. And if you have more questions about MVP 2.0, please reach out to myself or your regional coordinator. And successful and competitive projects have multiple partnerships. They're working with different vendors, community organizations, and community liaisons. They have thoughtful outreach and education that utilize climate data and science, and they support building capacity in the community. So how can these grant funds be used beyond the period of performance of the grant? And that's it. I'll hand it off to the next presenter. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Thank you, Courtney. The MVP, a number of our communities in Massachusetts have really benefited from this program and successfully applied and received funding. So I encourage you to reach out to Courtney in the Zoom room if you have more questions. Next up is Judith Rondeau. Judith will be covering 3 programs offered by the Watershed Planning Program at Mass DEP. Judith is a non-point source watershed specialist and outreach coordinator, and she'll be speaking about 319, 604B, and the Massachusetts MS4 Technical Assistance Program. So Judith, I'll turn it over to you. Welcome.
Thank you, Kim. And good morning, everyone. As Kim said, I'm Judy Rondeau. I am the NPS Outreach Coordinator with the Watershed Planning Program. 2 of the grants, the 604B and the 319, are offered through the Watershed Planning Program. The 3rd grant I'm just going to discuss very, very briefly. That's actually offered through our stormwater program. So I'll start with the 604B Water Quality Management Planning Grant. So this grant is funded through Section 604B of the Clean Water Act. So it's a federal grant. It's not a state grant. And funds are associated with projects that conduct water quality management planning, of course. Program priorities include all aspects of planning that will lead to the development of implementation projects. So this includes the characterization of water quality in impaired or threatened waters, quantification of pollutant loads, load reductions that are required to meet Mass water quality standards, and of course, the identification of solutions. This year and going forward, we'll be looking for projects that address climate change and that incorporate and demonstrate climate resiliency in their designs. Projects should evaluate if they're located in communities with environmental justice populations, and they should identify how they'll provide opportunities for equitable and fair access to the benefit of this grant program to those communities. Fundable projects under 604B include water quality monitoring, water quality assessment, and also watershed assessment. Those activities might lead to the development of 9-element watershed-based plans. When I talk about the 319 grant next, 319 implementation projects require a 9-element watershed-based plan. So if you're planning an implementation project, you might want to consider 604B first to do this kind of groundwork, laying the base to apply for those implementation grants later. As I previously said, climate resiliency is a priority starting this year and going forward. And 604B also will fund the planning and engineering design of implementation projects. We have 2 new categories this year, 604B Environmental Justice Non-Point Source Coordinator Program, which focuses on capacity building in communities with environmental justice populations, and regional scale watershed planning for nitrogen impacted areas. And this new category focuses on communities that are dealing with nitrogen loading and also implementing total maximum daily loads. Eligible entities for this grant include units of government, so regional planning agencies, councils of governments, counties, cities and towns, conservation districts, and tribes. This year, we have about $900,000 in funding, and this includes our regular 604B funding plus some additional funding from the bipartisan infrastructure law. Awards are typically in the range of $50,000 to $100,000. We don't have a minimum or maximum award amount. This is just kind of an average that we see from our applicants. We don't require match for this grant program. However, if you do provide match, it will increase the competitiveness of your proposal. The grant duration is 2 years with a potential for 2 one-year renewal options for a potential total of 4 years. We held a pre-RFP informational meeting in January. If you follow the link on the bottom of the slide, you can access information from that meeting on our grants website. The RFP was released last Friday, March 8th, so we can no longer discuss potential projects with you. If you have questions about the grant proposal itself, they must be submitted by 5 p.m. on March 20th to Megan Selby, who is our 604B grant coordinator. Her email address is there on the bottom left of the screen. And proposals are due on May 8th. A couple of things to think about when you're preparing your proposal. Please follow the outline that's provided in the RFP. If you do not follow the outline, you will lose points on your final score. Please assume that the reviewer doesn't know anything about your area, your water body, the water quality issues that you're trying to address. Please provide all relevant information so that the reviewer can make a fully informed review of your proposal. We have several pots of funding, as I mentioned, for this grant, and they cannot be mixed. So please be clear about your tasks and the associated task budget. So if your proposal is selected for partial funding, it's clear where it can potentially be split. And finally, please provide letters of support from your project partners to demonstrate community support for your project. And if you're in an environmental justice area, please be sure to include letters of support from the EJ community to demonstrate that the community both supports the project and also is engaged in the project. All right, Kim, that's it. We can move on to 319. All right. So 319 is also funded through the Clean Water Act, so it also is a federal grant. And this grant program is associated with, or I should say it funds projects to conduct implementations to restore impaired waters. So those are waters that are listed in the Massachusetts 303D list, which is also known as the Integrated List of Waters. Program priorities this year include projects that address the restoration of impaired waters and the protection of high quality unimpaired waters through the implementation of best management practices. As with the 604B, we want to see projects that incorporate climate resiliency in implementations. We like to see the application of new non-point source management technologies. And we look for projects that enhance diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, and environmental justice. And finally, projects will be prioritized if they build upon previous 319 projects or are based on 604B or other planning grant projects, such as MVP or coastal pollutant remediation grant projects. As I previously mentioned, Mass DEP accepted 9-element watershed-based plans are required for any implementation project. So project types include, they're broken into 2 types, implementation projects and non-implementation or capacity building projects. So implementation projects are projects that restore impaired waters or protect healthy waters. And new this year, we also have projects that restore nitrogen impacted areas. Capacity building projects include environmental justice non-point source coordinator. This is new this year. And as with the 604B, it focuses on capacity building in communities with environmental justice populations. We also fund regional non-point source implementation project development. This category funds regional planning agencies and other eligible nonprofit organizations to carry out non-point source focused work. Agricultural regional non-point source implementation projects, similar to the regional NPS project development. This focuses specifically on agricultural non-point sources. Non-point source capacity building and technology transfer. So these are projects that conduct capacity building at the local or regional level and activities such as the application of new non-point source management technologies. And finally, we will fund municipal and regional stormwater collaborative and funding mechanisms. So this is a category that provides funds to evaluate the development of a stormwater utility. We won't fund existing stormwater utilities, but all the groundwork that goes into evaluating whether or not you can develop a stormwater utility in your community. So we have approximately $3.1 million in funding this year. Like 604B, we have no minimum or maximum limits, but awards average anywhere from $50,000 to $500,000, kind of depending on what your best management practice might be. We have a big announcement this year. We're very excited to be able to say that we've been able to identify a source for non-federal match internally. So there is no match requirement in this grant round. We hope that we'll be able to sustain this in the future, but it will probably be a year-by-year thing. The grant duration is 2.5 years with the potential for a 1-year renewal option for a total of 3.5 years for each grant project. You can visit our grant website. Again, the link is on the bottom of the slide there to access information about our January pre-RFP informational meeting. We anticipate that this grant will be released tomorrow. So if you have questions, you have a tiny narrow window to contact us. Written questions are due on March 29th, and the proposal deadline is 5 p.m. on May 24th. As with the 604B, when you're preparing your proposal, please follow the outline provided in the RFP. Assume the reviewer doesn't know anything about your project, your area, your water body, your water concerns, and be sure that you're proposing comprehensive and feasible solutions to address your impairment, and you must provide pollutant load reductions. Any Massachusetts public or private organization is eligible for this grant. All right, next slide. All right. So the MS4 Municipal Assistance Grant Program, as I previously said, is offered by the Stormwater Program. So it's not a watershed planning program grant. And I would urge you, if you have any questions about this grant, to please contact Liz Clark, who is the grant coordinator Her email is on the bottom left of the slide there. So the purpose of this funding is to help groups of Massachusetts municipalities expand their efforts to meet the 2016 MS4 general permit requirements and reduce stormwater pollution through coordinated partnerships that emphasize resource sharing. Program priorities include municipalities that are subject to the current MS4 permit, and proposals must come from groups of 2 or more towns. Projects must be completed in the state fiscal year, which is June 30th, and preference is given to projects that will benefit the greatest number of municipalities, and proposals that address the needs of EJ communities will be prioritized. Project types include planning, resource sharing, education and outreach, and the implementation of projects that comply with MS4 permit requirements. And all stages of funding, all stages are eligible for funding. So planning projects, implementation projects. The available funding is $300,000. There's no maximum award, but the minimum award is $50,000. There is no match requirement. The 2024 grant round release date has not been announced, but it will likely be in the fall of 2024. The link to our DEP grants page is on the bottom of the slide there, so you can follow that to get more information about this particular grant program. And as I said, please contact Liz Clark if you have any questions about this grant. And that's
Thank
it
you,
for me,
Judy.
Kim. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. It's great to see that this year there's no match required for each of these 3 opportunities. So I encourage you, if you have a match with your project, to reach out to the folks at DEP. We'd like to transition now to the Clean Water SRF program. I'm pleased to introduce Robin McNamara. She's the Deputy Director for the Division of Municipal Services, and she will be speaking about the Clean Water SRF at DEP. Robin?
Thank you so much, Kim. I appreciate the introduction. I'm so happy to be here this morning. I'd like to give you a little overview of the State Revolving Fund program before I jump right into the clean water aspects of it. So Mass DEP and the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust jointly administer the Clean Water and Drinking Water State Revolving Funds to finance water infrastructure projects. State revolving funds assist communities in complying with the Clean Water and Safe Drinking Water Acts. The funding for this program comes from 3 sources. We have annual capitalization grants from EPA that come to the states. We have matching funds provided by the state, and we have the repayment of loans by borrowers. To date, the trust has financed $8.25 billion in loans for nearly 300 communities. That serves 97% of the Commonwealth's population. Over $312 million has been provided in loan forgiveness to disadvantaged communities. And for the Clean Water SRF program, eligible borrowers are municipalities or community wastewater utilities. The advantages of utilizing the SRF program over going out to the municipal bond market is that there's a fixed low interest rate. Loans with a 20-year term have an interest rate of 2%. Loans with a term of over 20 years generally have an interest rate of 2.4%. And certain projects qualify for a reduced or 0% interest rate loan. Interim loans, otherwise known as construction loans, are offered with no fees or interest, and these loans allow for one-stop financing through the trust. There is a flexible repayment term that loans may be financed up to 30 years with a useful life certificate on the facility. More about the disadvantaged communities' additional subsidy, otherwise known as loan forgiveness. The trust uses a percentage of the annual federal grant and state matching funding for loan forgiveness to disadvantaged communities which is based upon an annual affordability calculation. This calculation takes into account income, unemployment rate, and population changes of the community. Bill funding provides for supplemental loan forgiveness to disadvantaged communities that's actually in addition to the standard offering from the trust. So what type of projects are covered by the Clean Water SRF? Stormwater management, CSO corrections, I&I remediation, sewer system rehabilitation, wastewater treatment improvements and construction of facilities, collection systems, non-point source pollution management, nutrient enrichment mitigation and planning. And we also have wastewater infrastructure projects that are intended for the energy, water conservation, production of renewable energy, or for climate resiliency. We finance 3 different project phases. The first of which is asset management planning, which actually comes with a grant. We have planning projects that are related to our construction projects, and we also have the construction themselves. Projects that are given the greatest priority are those that will demonstrate, demonstrate water quality benefits, eliminate or mitigate risk to public health, and achieve or maintain compliance with, permanent water pollution controls. Each spring, we have a project solicitation, and it's issued approximately mid-May, and it's due in approximately mid-August. We meet with several of our colleagues in the regions and review and rank these projects using a 5-tier system. The tier system helps us to allow for transparency in the rating criteria, and it also makes it possible to evaluate similar projects consistently. In addition to that, it expedites the review and the evaluation process. So if your proposal is selected for financing, we then have it published in the intended use plan, which is issued in the early months of the following year. I've just gotten the signal that I'm running out of time, so I will look forward to meeting many of you in the breakout rooms, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Robin. I'm really excited to see how the communities are able to tap into this needed funding, and particularly the traditionally underserved communities. So thank you. And I encourage you to reach out to Robin in the Zoom breakout room. The next speaker is actually going to introduce a relatively new program called the New England Water Infrastructure Network Technical Assistance Program, offered through the New England Environmental Finance Center. It's really a great complement with the program that Robin just talked about with the Clean Water SRF, in that this program is specifically designed to help communities figure out how to navigate the bipartisan infrastructure bill and access this funding. So I'm pleased to introduce Laura Collins, Program Manager for the New England Water Infrastructure Network Technical Assistance Program. Laura, it's all yours.
Thank you, Kim. Hello, everyone. As Kim said, my name is Laura Collins. I am a program manager here at the New England Environmental Finance Center, and I manage the New England Water Infrastructure Network, which we call NEWIN, which is our newest program at NEFC, and it launched, we're just closing out its first year, and it's a 5-year technical assistance program aimed at helping communities access bipartisan infrastructure law funding for drinking water, wastewater, and non-point source pollution needs. So this is a little bit of a unique in this webinar because we're not funders, but we offer free technical assistance to support the work of some of these funders. So the work of specifically Mass DEP and the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust, who manage the drinking water and clean water SRF programs. We really, as Kim said, we focus on helping communities access SRF funding, but we also assist helping communities identify other sources of funding as well. We have a network of 5 core partners who work across New England and help us provide our free technical, financial, and managerial assistance services to any SRF eligible system. So Massachusetts, that is, those are municipalities and community wastewater utilities, as Robin said. And the types of projects that we support basically range from, the traditional water infrastructure projects like the pumps and the pipes to green infrastructure projects and project planning and financing, basically all of those categories that Robin mentioned in her previous slide. Our assistance basically runs the gamut in terms of, we provide support from initial project planning phases all the way up, through construction and project implementation. And we work in every state in New England. So we have a few examples of the types of projects that we're working on here. We prioritize working with disadvantaged communities, so those communities that meet state, so either Massachusetts' disadvantaged criteria or federal disadvantaged criteria, systems you haven't previously accessed the SRF program, and any systems with pressing or urgent water challenges. So we currently have 14 projects across New England and a few in Massachusetts. The example I have on the slide here about the supporting the financial capacity for a CSO long-term control plan is in a small community in Massachusetts. We also worked with another small community in the western part of the state on a drinking water project to help there's a sort of explore the potential of using emergency SRF funding to restore a leaking water tank. And now we're helping them with sort of the application process. And we are in the early phases of working with a small coastal historic town in Massachusetts on enhancing their resilience, the resilience of their stormwater and wastewater systems. So just a few examples of the types of work that we provide. Again, our program is really aimed to kind of augment the great work of Mass DEP and the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust, and to really help communities across New England and in Massachusetts get their share of bipartisan infrastructure law funding. So I look forward to answering any of your questions in the breakout groups later. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you, Robin. These 2 programs really offer a powerful opportunity to communities to advance their infrastructure projects. So thank you both for participating. We're going to shift gears a little bit away from infrastructure now into habitat restoration and ecological restoration. We have 2 speakers from the Mass Department of Ecological Restoration showcasing a couple of their programs. They offer a wide variety of practice type approaches to restoring habitat. Our first up is Allison Perlman. She is a Restoration Partnership Program Manager with the Restoration Partnerships Program. And Allison, I'm happy to turn the floor over to you.
Great, thank you, Kim. Hi, everyone. As Kim mentioned, I'm Allison Perlman. I'm the Restoration Partnership Program Manager within DER. Thank you all for joining us today. It's great to see so many people interested, and I know it's challenging to navigate some of these funding opportunities, so it's great to have you join us. Just a little bit about the partnership program itself. It's a fairly new program. I think we're going into the 3rd year now. And it's really focused on helping regional organizations build capacity to lead and support restoration and nature-based climate adaptation within their regions. So the Restoration Partnership Program is focused on regional or watershed scale to encourage that system-wide benefits and allow cross-boundary thinking. It's locally driven. Planning, prioritization, and projects are developed by the partnership organizations who have been working in their regions for years. It's focused on capacity building. We all know that capacity is often a major barrier to advance restoration and climate resiliency work. And so the program's really focused on supporting both the knowledge and skills development for restoration and providing funding for staffing positions. The program's focused on resiliency and collaboration, supporting a restoration community, fostering relationships that allow for holistic and cross-sector thinking with partners both from kind of upstream and downstream communities with varied strengths, and providing that space for them to come together to share experiences, identify common needs, and foster professional connections. And then finally, providing solid, predictable funding to allow for the time to build a foundation for that long-term ecological and community resiliency benefits. So just a little bit on the technical side of the grant itself. The partnership program funding provides an estimated $100,000 to $200,000 annually per partnership. Last year was slightly higher than that. The partnership term is 3 to 5 years, and match is not required this year. So the RFR, we'll release another RFR for phase 2 new partnerships, which will be released in spring 2024. So that's right around the corner. And just kind of a little clarification. So on project types, I really want to kind of highlight that our program is really focused on capacity building and also projects. And so early partnerships often utilize a majority of the funding for staffing positions, collaboration work and planning, and then some of the funding goes towards kickstarting projects to kind of get them grant ready. So these projects are focused on aquatic habitat restoration and include dam removals, culvert replacements, wetland restoration, both freshwater and coastal, urban river revitalization, retired cranberry bog restoration, and floodplain restoration. As I mentioned, the next RFR will be going out this spring. And so it's kind of considered as a phase 2 of the program, slightly different than the last RFR, but it's really focused on kind of the following criteria, region-based. So applicants' proposed work is within an interconnected geographic Massachusetts region, which spans beyond jurisdictional boundaries. The applicants also currently are planning to expand work to pursue restoration of degraded aquatic ecosystems and nature-based climate resiliency with long-term benefits to the surrounding ecology and communities. It's also the applicants will be prioritizing implementation of existing long-range strategic or similar plans to maximize the potential for high-quality vetted restoration projects with local support and co-benefits. Applicants will also prioritize leading collaboratively, engaging a diversity of partners, bridging interests and cultures to find common ground, and ensuring equitable delivery of restoration benefits. The applicants will demonstrate the ability to build lasting capacity among partners to advance restoration and climate resiliency activities. And the applicants will highlight communication strategies to amplify values and benefits of ecological restoration, climate resiliency, and uplift partnership successes. So in terms of eligibility, the lead organization are really nonprofits and regional planning agencies. Again, though, this is a partnership, which includes several organizations. So depending on the structure of the partnership, some core partners receive funding, and that eligibility is a little broader. I also wanted to highlight that, as Kim mentioned, DER has several sources of funding, and they all kind of are coming out soon. One is the CRMA program, which Holden's about to talk about. But I also wanted to highlight that there are 2 other funding opportunities coming out. One is coastal wetland and retired cranberry bog restoration projects. And the notice of funding opportunity will be out shortly. So that's really project focused. And then the priority projects funding, which the RFR is likely to come out this summer. So that's a lot of information. But if you have any additional questions, please join Holden and I in our breakout session later. Thanks.
Thank you, Allison. Yeah, so I encourage you to reach out to Allison and Holden and also visit their webpage. There's a lot of great information there. So next up is Holden Sparcino, from a stream continuity manager with Department of Ecological Restoration, and he's going to be talking about funding for culvert replacement, which I know a lot of our communities are struggling with in the region. So Holden, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Kim. I'm just going to drop some information in the chat for some direct links that you can use. So my name is Holden Sparacino. I'm the Stream Continuity Program Manager with DER. And as mentioned, I'll be talking about the culvert replacement grant opportunity. I will say that the application just launched yesterday afternoon, so it still has that new grant smell. It's so new that we're updating our website currently. So if some of the text still says the RFR will launch in the coming weeks, that's just because we haven't updated the website yet. I expect it'll be fully updated this afternoon. So as the grant opportunity is now live, I want to just highlight that due to state procurement law, I'm not able to answer questions about particular projects, but I will try to provide general information about the grant opportunity. If you do have a clarifying or technical question regarding the application or application process, we do have a Q&A that is open. Questions should be submitted in writing by 4 p.m. on March 22nd, and they must be sent to the derculverts@mass.gov email address, and they should include the RFR ID in the subject line. And that text, again, I sent in the chat, so you can copy that RFR ID directly, but it is DER 2024-03. Okay, so now to get to the fun stuff, the Division of Ecological Restoration's Culvert Replacement Municipal Assistance Grant Program is seeking proposals from municipalities, local government units, as well as federally recognized and state acknowledged tribes interested in replacing or removing undersized, perched, or degraded culverts or bridges in Massachusetts located in areas of high ecological value. I will also note that we do have resources on our website for identifying areas of high ecological value, including habitat and restoration potential. So please take a look at the website link that I sent over. Some of those materials will help you establish, which culvert crossings might be a good fit or likely, to be a good candidate for this funding source. The purpose of this funding is to encourage applicants to replace aging culverts with better designed crossings that meet improved structural and environmental design standards, as well as flood resiliency criteria. And applications are due Friday, April 12th at 4 p.m. DER estimates that approximately 2 to 3 million will be available in fiscal year 25, and these funds will be used for any step of the design or any step of the replacement process or removal process, including field data collection, design and engineering, permitting, and construction activities. Culverts or small bridges must be located on a public way, and only projects that intend to meet the goals of the Massachusetts Stream Crossing Standards will be considered for funding. Crossings must be over a non-tidal river or stream channel. The stream channel may be either intermittent or perennial. And as I mentioned, the application is now live and the materials have been posted to Combis, and that link is both on the slide as well as in the chat. As I mentioned, applications are due Friday, April 12th, and questions are due March 22nd. And please visit DER's website for additional resources, including our recently updated frequently asked questions, the tools, as I mentioned, such as the one to identify areas of high ecological value. And those can all be found on DER's website that is again linked in the chat. I think that is it from me, and thanks everyone for joining. Really excited to hear about all the different opportunities.
Thanks, Holden. And thank you, Allison, as well. We have so many projects that have benefited from DER assistance, and I'm personally involved in one that was hung up for about 20 years and is now advancing to design through the partnerships program. So thank you both for highlighting these opportunities for our communities. We're going to transition now to coastal zone management. There are a number of programs that are offered through Mass CCM for our coastal communities that help build coastal resilience. First up is India Mackinson. She's a coastal resilience grant specialist with CCM, and she will be talking about coastal resilience grants. India, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm India Mackinson, the Coastal Resilience Grant Specialist at CCM, and I'll be presenting on our Coastal Resilience Grant Program. So our program started in 2014, so we've been funding projects for 10 years now with the following program priorities: addressing current and future coastal flooding, erosion, and sea level rise, protecting public facilities and critical infrastructure, providing broad public benefits and access, and supporting the adaptation of environmental justice communities. So to address these goals, which again are focused on resilience to coastal hazards, we have 5 eligible project categories. Projects can focus on one or more of these in their application. First is detailed vulnerability and risk assessments. These projects build off planning priorities, such as those established during MVP, to map and evaluate vulnerable public facilities. These projects use the best available climate science and consider multiple planning horizons. Next is public outreach, which helps communities better understand the risks ahead of them and empowers them with this knowledge to make their community more resilient. We also have proactive planning, which changes policies and implements processes that helps the community more holistically prepare for climate change, such as stricter building codes in the floodplain or planning phase managed retreat. We also have redesigns and retrofits, which are more construction focused and helps vulnerable public facilities to adapt or retreat from hazards. And finally, we have shoreline restoration, which is also construction focused. Here we focus on using nature-based solutions to stabilize shorelines on both the beach and the bayside, which can have erosion and flooding control benefits. So we are able to support projects through multiple phases, including planning, design, permitting, construction, and monitoring. Typically, we fund only 1 or 2 of these phases at a time due to the time constraint of the grant, which is only about 9 months from the contract award to the end of the fiscal year, which that would be the hard deadline for grant activities. We have had some projects come in through multiple grant rounds to do all these phases with us, but communities can also come in at any phase as long as they have the proper documentation for previous phases, such as permitting to come in for a construction application. But overall, what makes applications competitive is proposing a project that can be completed within the grant timeline, even if it is just one of those phases. So to go over some more details for this year, our grant is eligible for Massachusetts coastal cities and towns, nonprofits with vulnerable coastal property that is open and accessible to the public, and federally recognized and state acknowledged tribes. For fiscal year 25, our request for responses come out in April this year. So for this round, we have about $4 million of funding available with a project cap of $2 million. We haven't had match the past couple of years. We are bringing it back with some caveats. Match will be waived for tribes and projects that directly involve environmental justice communities. But match will be required for construction implementation projects at 25% of the total project cost. For all the other project categories I mentioned, that 25 match is encouraged, but not required. This year, we also are encouraging a few project themes, which are regional partnerships, adapting critical facilities, and environmental justice. For all applicants, but especially for those focused on regional partnerships and EJ, strong letters of support are really essential for a competitive application. So CCM will be available until the RFR is released to get feedback on your applications, which again, we expect next month in April. You can email me or your CZM regional coordinator to set up a meeting anytime. And even if you're not ready for this round, we're available throughout the year to help build those applications because this is an annual opportunity. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, India. That's a really interesting opportunity, and it's nice that the match is waived for the tribes and projects for environmental justice communities. Next up is Kathleen Mason, also with the Office of Coastal Zone Management. Kathleen's a coastal habitat and water quality specialist, and she will be talking about opportunities to improve habitat and water quality. Kathleen, take it away.
Thanks, Kim. So I'm Kathleen Mason. I'll be presenting on the Coastal Habitat and Water Quality Grant opportunity for fiscal year 25. And we're expecting a spring release date. And so the Coastal Habitat and Water Quality Grant provides financial resources for projects within the coastal watershed that will improve or protect water quality and habitat through a variety of different ways, which I'll talk about in our project types. And more specifically, we strive towards some program goals of remediation of impaired water bodies, reduction or elimination of instances of beach closures, the implementation of green stormwater infrastructure, and comprehensive restoration to protect and improve the function of our coastal habitats. Municipalities within the Massachusetts coastal watershed are eligible to apply, and then federally recognized and state acknowledged tribes, nonprofits, regional planning agencies, and stormwater collaboratives are eligible for application as long as they're in partnership with a coastal municipality. And you can find a map of the municipalities within the coastal watershed on our website if you're not sure if your community is within that. So eligible project activities can fall within one or more of the 5 categories that I'll list. So these include efforts to assess, identify, and characterize non-point source pollution impacts from stormwater runoff to coastal water bodies, the design and construction of stormwater structural best management practices, capacity building activities that include trainings for municipal staff, bylaw development, and case studies, and ultimately these should support future implementation of green stormwater infrastructure. Another eligible project is development of habitat restoration plans, and that might include data collection and synthesis, natural resource assessments, and restoration prioritization work. Ultimately, that provides a comprehensive analysis of the stressors in the environment and options for restoration. That would be detailed in that plan. And then the last category is the advancement of priority land acquisition planning activities. And that's for the purposes of restoration and buffer protection for future marsh migration. And so this category specifically is for those that have previously completed a habitat restoration plan with funding through the Coastal Habitat and Water Quality Grant. Competitive projects might also incorporate community participation and engagement, and the grant might also help fund education outreach as components of the broader 5 categories that I mentioned. This year, our grant has about $2 million in funding available, and generally projects are estimated to range in the $50,000 to $850,000 range, and that kind of depends on the project type and its nature. A match is not required, but it is encouraged. And then projects can be within a 1 or 2 year timeline, which follows the state fiscal year calendar of July 1st to June 30th. Again, as India said, note that Coastal Habitat and Water Quality staff, as well as our Coastal Zone Management Regional Coordinators, are available to meet. We can provide technical assistance, look through the applications and materials all the way until that RFR is released. So feel free to reach out to me. I've provided my email on the slide. You can also visit our website to get the contacts for our regional coordinators directly, or I can help you with that. So looking forward to hearing your questions later.
Thank you, Kathleen, and thank you, India, as well. So we're going to transition now to our regional program offerings. So that wraps up the state program offerings. And I must say, it's a really impressive array of programs that are offered in Massachusetts. First up on the regional funding opportunity is the Narragansett Bay Estuary Program. Narragansett Bay Estuary Program is one of 3 estuary programs in the region, Mass Bays being the other and Buzzards Bay being the third. And Narragansett Bay covers quite a wide area, most of Rhode Island and a good portion of southeastern Massachusetts. Darcy Young is the outreach coordinator for Narragansett Bay Estuary Program. She could not be here today, and I put her contact information in the chat if you'd like to reach out to her. And so Pang Sodonsambat from the SNEP Network will be covering her slides today. Pang, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Kim. As Kim said, Darcy isn't here, so I'll be filling in and providing a little more information about the estuary program's funding opportunity. So to start, I wanted to give a little bit of background on the Narragansett Bay Estuary Program. The NBEP serves the watersheds of Narragansett Bay, Little Narragansett Bay, and the Rhode Island coastal ponds. So over the next 3 years, NBEP will continue to receive funds through the bipartisan infrastructure law, and the intention is to subaward all of those funds. So that's very exciting. The NBEP is still assessing topic priorities at the moment for this year's grant program, but they will have an eye toward releasing the RFP this summer or fall. And in general, they fund projects that are consistent with their comprehensive conservation and management plan, which is a list of priorities for improving water quality, wildlife habitat, and public access to natural resources in their estuaries and their watersheds. An example of this, or example of RFPs in the past, have included green infrastructure planning and capacity building and habitat restoration and public access planning. So projects must take place within the Narragansett Bay watershed area. If you aren't sure if your project is eligible, please refer to the interactive map on their website or reach out directly to the NBEP staff for guidance. The NBEP specializes in providing flexible funding for pre-construction activities from early public engagement, project selection, and capacity building up through the final designs and permits. They really work hard to streamline the application process and are always available for consultations with potential applicants about project ideas and requirements from federal funding. They also strive to be very responsive to community needs, so please let them know about your funding hurdles and they will definitely get back to you. Some details about the grant. So the funding amount is estimated to be between $450,000 and $910,000, with $900,000. With applications between $50,000 and $250,000. No match is required for this grant. The RFP is expected to be released in the summer of 2024. And to stay up to date on the RFP announcements, you can sign up to join their mailing list on the slide there. So again, if you have any questions, please contact Darcy Young. Kim has put her email in the chat. Following this webinar, you'll also receive a contact list for all the funders you hear about today. So that is all I have. Take it away, Kim.
Thank you, Pang. I just have to say I've worked with Darcy, and while the grants are on the smaller size, they really can provide some gap assistance as communities are moving from project concept and site assessment into design and implementation. And we've lined up a few communities. They also, the limited match or no match and streamlined application process is really attractive. I'd like to transition now to a national program that's offered through the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. It's the National Coastal Resilience Fund. This fund is eligible to coastal communities both in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And I'd like to introduce Kyle Gray, who's the Chief of Staff with Thoreau Environmental, and he will be speaking about the National Coastal Resilience Fund. Kyle, take it away.
Thanks so much, Kim. Good to see you and good to see everybody. Again, really great turnout in Massachusetts today. So as Kim mentioned, I will be talking about the National Coastal Resilience Fund, which is one of one of multiple funding opportunities in the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. So this one is available across the country. So just caveat there, folks will be competing nationally, but there's $140 million available, and that's for the entire coastal US. It's not just shoreline. We are thinking about coastal watersheds. And there's a mapper available online that you can use to kind of pinpoint your project or the community that you're working in and figure out whether or not you fall within that watershed. So here I'm going to start on the right side of the screen and we'll kind of hop around a little bit. I want to begin by talking about some program priorities. So by and large, there are a few key things to know about this program. And the first is that resilience is in the name, right? So this is meant to enhance the resilience of coastal communities that are facing threats from coastal hazards. So you can demonstrate resilience benefits to your communities by identifying the specific communities that are at risk, by demonstrating critical infrastructure or assets that are at risk to coastal hazards. Really, you want to make the case that the reviewers have a good understanding of the projects that you're putting forth and how they will enhance the resilience at a community level. Of course, it's the Fish and Wildlife Foundation, so there should also be clear benefits to fish and wildlife habitat as well. And you can do that by demonstrating endangered species or acres of habitat that are being restored or protected. And the last kind of big overarching piece I want to mention here is the preference for nature-based solutions. So this program is highly focused on using nature-based or nature-mimicking solutions to advance resilience in fish and wildlife habitat. So those pieces are really the key points to this program. And on top of that, there are also various criteria that would make you more competitive, such as the ability to serve underserved communities, or the ability for project ideas or lessons learned to be transferred or shared across a region and scaled up. Also, you can think about innovative solutions here. NIFWF definitely doesn't shy away from the innovative kind of nature-based techniques. But really what they're looking for is sustainability and thinking about how the innovative nature-based solutions that we're using can create long-term impacts into the future. So I already talked about geography briefly, and we can put that link in the chat. Eligible applicants are pretty much everybody that you'd expect, and they're listed in the bottom right. No federal agencies, no foreign governments, but you can be a nonprofit or a for-profit. It can be state, local, tribal governments, or institutions of higher learning. So now we'll go to the middle here. There are 4 different categories that you can apply for, and you'll see those listed on screen. Essentially, you can think about this as a pipeline. So while NIFWF is aiming to move folks towards implementation of those nature-based solutions, you also have the opportunity to apply for planning, design, or permitting. So it's not just implementation-ready projects for this program. You can, in fact, come in at kind of the entry-level phase of capacity building planning. You can come in at the site assessment and preliminary design phase to get anywhere between 30 and 60% design. Or you can apply for final design and permitting to get up to 90% or 100% design and undergo some of those permitting conversations. If you are ready, of course, you can go after implementation and restoration. And that's the big one. So you'll see some of the funding amounts on the top left of the screen here. The planning and the design categories, those first 3, can range anywhere between 100,000 and 1 million. And there is no official minimum or maximum in this program. That's just the expected range. So that's what most applications come in at, between 100 and 1 million. For the final category, restoration and monitoring, that's the big kahuna. That's where applications tend to be anywhere between 1 and 10 million because we're talking about construction. But again, no minimum, no maximum. One piece I do want to mention is the match. So match is not required for this program, but it's strongly encouraged. And that was the change they made maybe 3 cycles ago, thinking about how match could be a real barrier for folks, especially underserved or disadvantaged communities. So I would just say, if you have the capacity to bring match to the table, you definitely should. It makes for a stronger proposal. It shows buy-in, it gets partners to the table. So it's definitely beneficial. But again, if that's difficult, there are different ways to approach that, whether it's in-kind match or something more innovative. Lastly here, a couple important dates. So the RFP is live. The link is at the bottom of the screen. Pre-proposals are due on April 10th. After that pre-proposal review period throughout May, there would be an invitation to submit a full that happens in June, with a due date for final proposals on July 2nd. And awards tend to come out later in the year around November or December. So I think that is it. I will turn it back to Kim. But again, our team at Throw Environmental, we are the field liaisons for this program. So we're more than happy to help folks build competitive proposals as they think about NCRF.
Thank you, Kyle. I should have prefaced your introduction by indicating that Thoreau is a consultant working for National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. And if you have a project that fits in the sweet spot of nature-based solutions, human resilience, and habitat restoration, I strongly encourage you to reach out to Kyle and access the staff at Thoreau, because they will help you develop your project and give you coaching points on how to make it more competitive. So if you have a project in that category that you think fits, feel free to reach out to Kyle during the session and otherwise. We're going to transition now to a SNEP program offered through the Restore America's Estuaries program. Our speaker is Tom Ardito. He's the director of the SNEP Watershed Implementations Grant Program, otherwise known as SWIG. And we've had many communities throughout Rhode Island and Massachusetts benefit from this program, which has been around, I think, Tom, you'll cover it, since 2008 or 9. So without further delay, I'll pass it over to Tom.
Thank you, Kim. And thanks to the SNEP Network for hosting this workshop. We're really happy to be able to present information on this program. Like other programs you've heard from today, our RFP is currently open. So you can go to the URL right at the bottom of the screen there, snepgrants.org, and access our request for proposals and a link to our application website. So as Kim indicated, Restore America's Estuaries has a partnership with EPA to manage the SNEP Watershed Implementation Grants Program. And you can think of it as kind of a corollary to the SNEP Network. The SNEP Network provides technical assistance in support of the SNEP mission, and we provide funding in support of the SNEP mission. And that mission, you can go to the EPA SNEP website and refer to the SNEP strategic plan, and you'll see the three major elements are clean water, healthy ecosystems, and sustainable communities. So those are the big priorities that we look at. This year in 2024, we have about 2.8 million available, which will be awarded in Rhode Island and Massachusetts, Southeast Massachusetts in the SNEP region, obviously. Our grants are from $10,000 to $500,000, typically in the $100,000 to $400,000 range, with a maximum project period of 2 years. 30% non-federal match is required, and we're flexible, as Kyle was indicating with NIFWIF, the NIFWIF program. We're open to in-kind and many other forms of contribution as match besides cash. The applications are open right now. As I mentioned, a letter of intent is the first step in a two-step application process. And the deadline for the LOI is April 5th. So there's plenty of time to get that together. After reviewing the letters of intent, we'll invite full proposals and typically notify awards in July, with projects starting typically very early fall once the grant agreements are done and the awards have been announced. While you're on our website, you could also see past projects. Just click on the project year, and you'll see the kind of things we've funded in the past. And you'll see it's a really broad range of work within those three categories that I mentioned. All aimed at implementing the SNEP strategic plan. We very much favor partnership projects, whether those are multi-community or, among different organizations or even interstate. We look for multiple benefit projects, comprehensive type projects, like some of the other programs you've heard from favoring nature-based solutions such as stormwater and other water quality work. We fund environmental justice projects, green streets and neighborhoods, that kind of thing. We fund a lot of habitat restoration, wetlands, rivers, dam removals, oyster reefs. We fund coastal resilience work, such as shoreline restoration, floodplain restoration, innovative and pilot projects like permeable reactive barriers and bioreactors, that kind of thing. We can fund planning or permitting or implementation or post-construction work or any combination of the above. So we have a lot of flexibility in that regard. And we can also fund conferences and tech transfer activities either as part of a larger grant or as a smaller standalone grant. And we do encourage that all our projects include public engagement and outreach, as well as information sharing throughout the SNEP region with practitioners who may be doing a similar project to your project in the region. Like NIFWIF, eligibility is pretty broad: municipalities, state agencies, tribes, nonprofit organizations, regional planning organizations, and academic institutions. So with that, I'll just, that provides kind of a quick overview. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have in the chat room later. And again, just go to snepgrants.org where you can access the request for proposals, the application link, and also you could jump to the EPA SNEP website there and see the strategic plan and other information on the broader SNEP program. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. So it's a streamlined letter of intent and it's due April 5th. And if you have questions, feel free to join the chat room with Tom. So we're right on time. We're at our final speaker, Christina Madania. She's an outreach coordinator for the SNEP program. And Christina will be talking more broadly about the SNEP opportunities. Christina, I'll send it over to you.
Thanks, Kimberly. So I'm Christina with EPA Region 1. I work in the SNEP program. So I'm talking about two opportunities that are currently open. The first one is going to be the SNEP opportunity to advance resilience. We call it SOAR for short. This is a funding opportunity. It's more of a cooperative agreement to improve and support climate resiliency in disadvantaged communities throughout the SNEP region, so all of Rhode Island and Southeast Massachusetts. And we really emphasize community involvement, being engaged in the design and implementation of these projects to look at anticipated climate change impacts, and then also addressing historic impacts of climate and social injustices. Our projects are from the planning stage, implementation, outreach, training, capacity building. This is really to fill in a gap for, we're trying to emphasize a lot of smaller, already like community-based organizations to apply for this opportunity, because we want to fill in people who or organizations who maybe haven't received funding, specifically federal funding, in the last 5 years, to get these opportunities and to put in smaller projects all the way up to bigger ones. So the funding is $1.25 million for each cycle. This is our second year funding this. The awards are usually $50,000 to $300,000. We're hoping to do roughly 3 big projects on the end of that range and 7 smaller ones, again, for like new applicants who haven't gone through this grant process before, and really being through a cooperative agreement, really being resourceful and helping make these changes in these communities that have historically been underserved. There is no match requirement, and the project period, these are direct funds. So there's nothing incremental. You get the set amount if awarded, and then through the SNEP Network and through your project officer, we help you manage those funds for up to 5 years or however long the duration of your project is. So applications are now open. We have a webinar on the 16th. I'll give you some more information about those other important dates. The second opportunity is the SNEP Network, which is hosting this workshop. That is also open currently. There is a minimum 20% match. It's a 5-year funded period of $8.75 million. And it's to facilitate these resources and guidance, tech assistance for all of our grantees in the SNEP network. So I got my minute warning, but I'm happy to answer more questions either through the Q&A or in the breakout room. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you to everybody that's participated, both the speakers and the audience. We did an amazing job of staying on time. Peng, I don't see any questions in the chat. Is there anything popping up that we should try to answer before we go to the Zoom breakout rooms?
No, it looks like our presenters did an exceptional job answering the questions as they came in the Q&A session. So maybe give folks a minute to type in any general questions they may have, and then we can sort of transition into the breakout rooms. So yeah, in the meantime, Kim, why don't we go over, oh, here's a question. So the question is whether SOAR is only available for the SNEP region of Massachusetts. Is that the Blackstone watershed south to Narragansett Bay? So Christina, you may be the one to answer this question.
Yeah, and so I just put a map in the chat for everybody, and that is kind of interactive to see where our disadvantaged communities are and what our SNEP region is. SOAR only applies to this region. And so if you're looking at a specific project, I advise you to check out that map, and then you can visually see whether or not your project falls into the region and requirements.
Okay, so feel free to enter any further questions into the chat. We're gonna give you some directions. So the slide is up for how to navigate to your room. So we're gonna have 4 different meeting rooms, and there'll be links for each room that we'll put into the webinar chat. And feel free to move between meetings, rooms, just like you're in a building, only you're gonna Zoom to the room and pair up with the funding entity that you're interested in speaking with. And we will keep, I think the rooms will be open till, what is it, 12 o'clock, Peng? We'll have people there, but once we don't see any activity, we'll probably close it off. And you're free to leave now if you can't stick on, but if you'd like to speak to a funder, please do so. So in room 1, we have the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program. So we'll have Courtney there. And then the 2 Coastal Resilience Grant programs will also be in funding room 1. In funding room 2, we'll have the DEP programs, the 604B, the 319 grant programs, and the MS4 municipal assistance, along with Robin, who will be talking about Clean Water SRF and SRF BIL, technical assistance through the New England Environmental Finance Center. And then in room 3, we've got the 2 Department of Ecological Restoration programs. And in 4, we've got the regional programs with the National Coastal Resilience Fund, the SNEP Watershed Implementation Grants, and the SNEP Grants Program. So I believe the links are in the chat, so you can just click on the link that you want to go to, and this will remain throughout the rest of the meeting so that you have those links. They'll also be in your email inbox. I believe Leah sent them around to everybody in attendance. So feel free to go into your Zoom rooms, and thank you all for attending.